Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're Masechtas Gittin Daf Lamed. We're going to begin on Chav Tesmet Beis, about 10 lines from the bottom, with the words Hahu Gavra. This is based on the Mishnah that we discussed, the distinction between a shliach from Eretz Yisrael, where he could make a shliach, and the second shliach could make a shliach. Because B'fanei Nechtam is not required, it doesn't even have to be done b'beistin. As the Gemara said, that Shliach B'Eretz Yisrael Oisek Kam Shluchin. However, when it comes to Medina Siyam, where you have to say B'fanei Nechtam, so when a Shliach is sick, he can make another Shliach, but it always has to be done in a Beis. The second one as well, if he wants to make a Shliach, has to be with a Beis. So, Hahu Garva Deshadur La Gittin with a Beisu. So it was a man who sent a get to his wife through a shliach. Armalei l'shliach lo tisvei nehile ad tlasin yomin. That basically you should wait for 30 days. To itnis begoy tlasin yomin. Some type of oinus took place for the shliach within those 30 days. Says Rashi, shel yuchel leilach achar shloshim. He could not go after the 30 days. So since he couldn't do it after the 30 days, he didn't know what to do, because that was what the stipulation was by the husband. So also committed Rabbi Omer Rabba Chalataimamai. Why does our Mishnah say that if a person is sick, you are able to appoint another shliach mishum de'anus? Because it's beyond your control. You don't want to get sick, but this is what happens, so you can make a shliach. So hainami onusu. This is also a situation of an einus, and therefore he'd be able to appoint someone else. Amalei maser milach kamei didan. You have literally put words in front of us. So basically he's saying that he's only making him into a shliach after the 30 days because he wasn't able to do so. So it's almost like he's not really even a shliach at this point. So again, the problem is that within those 30 days, he's not really a shliach because he's a shliach, but he can't give the get within those 30 days. And therefore, because of that, maybe he doesn't have the authority to be able to make someone else into a shliach, even by noinus. Since in 30 days he will be able to carry it out if everything would have been fine, so therefore it's considered to be nitel negerishin, and therefore because of that, the din is that he can make another shliach. So v'leicha shema pies. Shouldn't we be concerned if all this time has transpired? Maybe he changed his mind, the husband. Says Rashi, b'toich yud beis chodesh, within 12 months, she shahis harbe is a lot of time. Lava ve'en zed daim l'sholech get memdina siyam. This is not a case where a person just sends a get. Let's say he's living in China and he's sending a get to the United States. He didn't say, please wait 6 months until you give this get. He specified. So over there, the we can't say that maybe he changed his mind. Maybe he got there very quickly. Or maybe she happened to be in the neighborhood, so he was able to give her the get immediately, or a few days later. So in that situation, in general, Rashi says, we're not going to even have the havamina to think that he was mafias, because he didn't put any set time, and therefore it's possible maybe the shliach took a plane ride that second, and he got to this woman the same day. So therefore, because of that, we're not going to be chayish of fies, because he has no idea when the get was actually given. However, here, where he gave a specific amount of time, maybe the din is different, and maybe we should be chayish that maybe he reconciled with this woman. Person says, I want this get to be chal now, and then it says, if I don't, I don't come until 12 months. The guy dies. So how does it get? So he said it's a good get. because he said V'achshav. V'avinin ba v'nei Hashem afiyes. Maybe we should be concerned within those 12 months, during that time before he died, or he may have changed his mind. So V'amar Rabba bar Rab Huna hachi amar Rabba mori mishmei Rav. Ba'omer Talmor, the husband says nemenes alai loymar shlobasi. So he said nemenes alai, says Rashi, kemeh edim, like 100 witnesses. L'oilam im arer, if I complain, loymer get yashanhu. Hareini mamina loymer shlobasi. B'toich hazman etzel v'kivandem ikar himena sulo mehiman l'arer. So basically, in this situation, the husband is trustworthy to know that he's not going to change. So in that situation, if we know pretty definitively that that's the husband's take, so then we're not concerned. However, in our situation, maybe within the 30 days, maybe he did reconcile with his wife, and it's a get yoshan. So over there, he said specifically, right? Basically, he said, he's believed to say that I did not do it. I did not have be with my wife. However, in this situation, since he said this statement, how do we know? It says Rashi, Alma, time with Yomer Hachi. It's only because he specified this. He didn't say, the husband didn't say anything. So how do we know that within this time frame that he didn't change his mind? So Ichsef, he was embarrassed. So Saifi, about this whole question, because maybe in fact it's problematic, this get. Was Saifi Gali Milsa di Arusa Havoy. It turned out that this woman was actually not a Nesua, it was an Arusa. Which means she never had be with her. So Amarava im Amru ben Nesua Yomer Arusa. Even though it's possible that he could have been Matthias her and had be, and therefore would be a get Yashan, maybe that's only when she's married, or he's had an intimate relationship with her, but not by Erison. Amrava Havade Kamid Boyalam. This is actually a question as we continue Lamed Aleph. Kima shall be based in Shliach Bifanav or Shlo Bifanav. When the Beis Din appoints a Shliach, does it have to be Bifanav or not? Says Rashi. Mi boy Bifanav, the Shliach Kama. Does it have to be in front of the first shliach? Or if you shlo b'fanav, kegon zeh shehu anus, ve'enu yochel akev kan v'yelch darko. He's not able to go on his road. So Hader Pashto answered ben b'fanav ben shlo b'fanav, that the Beis Din is able to appoint a new shliach even not in the presence of the first shliach. Shalch mitam ben b'fanav ben shlo b'fanav, and that in fact how it was established. Hahudi Oimer, a person said, Kilo Asina Tlasin Yomin Lahavigita. They don't come within 30 days, this is the famous Gemara in Ksubas, is what I quoted before. Within 30 days, it's going to be a get. Asa, so he wanted to give a get. Because he said, unless I come in 30 days, and then the get will be batal. Upaski Maber. So he literally was going to change his mind, and he missed the flight. Here he missed the ferry. He screamed on the other side, look, I'm here. You're not considered like in town, you're not here. You said you were going to be here, not on the other side of the water. So we see, this is actually, so therefore it's a get, it's an oinus. So we see from here, ein oinus begitten. That's one interpretation, as the Gemara in Ksubas discusses. Look at Rashi. Inami yesh oinus begitten, or maybe there are oins in beget. Says Rashi, "Ukinam shmaisa kamaisa the Ksubas dahai unsa the shchiachu v'iboyle asude." Because it's very possible you can miss your flight, so that's something which is shchiach, and therefore that should have been something which he stipulated. Okay. So there's different types of oinsin. Hahu de oimerhu. If I don't appease her within 30 days, also paisa. So he went to try to appease her. However, she didn't accept his appeasement. She said, "No, I'm not interested." So Rabbi Yosef, mi yoivla terkava de dinri. v'lo ipaisa. Did he give her like all this money and not be appeased? Notice he didn't really appease her properly. So that's not considered to be an appeasement, says Rashi. V'kivan shelo asa kein nimshel paisa. Even though you say, well, he tried, but she didn't accept. Maybe he didn't try hard enough. Even though he doesn't have all this money, or I'm reading honest, then adam yochel litain oines b'tanai shall get v'havigita. It's not. It doesn't help, and therefore, because of that, it will be a valid get. Ikadi Amri Rabbi Yosef Midi Tarkava Didinri Boil Mesavla. Does he really have to give all this stuff, all this money? Paisa, he tried. Vlo ipaisa, but she didn't accept it. But it doesn't make a difference she didn't accept it, but he tried. Therefore, it's not a get. This situation is Kamandi Omer, like the one who says Yesh Oinus Begittin, that there are such a thing as an Oinus by a get. And the statement before, Kamandi Omer Ein Oinus Begittin, regarding the situation of Pascha Mavra, and we say it's still a get because Ein Oinus Begittin. Again, the Gemara in Ksubas discusses this at greater length. Let's see the next mission. That's decent. So Amalva Mois as a Kohen. Let's say you have a Yisrael who lends money to a Kohen. So now, instead of the Kohen paying back with money, there is an understanding, a stipulation, that this Yisrael, instead of giving Trumas and Maestras to the different people, he's just going to withhold it, and that will be considered like his payment. So that actually works. Vyasa Levi, Vyasa Ani, or let's say the Yisrael lent money to a Levi or to a poor person. Again, they're entitled to either Meiser Rishon or Ani Meiser Ani on years 3 and 6. So we can be mafresh it as though those people are alive, because the only way that the Yisrael can keep it is if technically he had someone to give it to. But if that person died, you can't give Meiser Rishon to a Levi who's dead. You have to give it to someone who's alive. So the question is, how's he allowed to use it? Because, as we said, we assume that that person is alive, as we saw on Chav Ches. So says Rashi, we're not concerned that maybe the Kohen or Levi died, or for that matter, the poor person got rich, and therefore, in all those situations, they wouldn't be entitled to these things. We're not afraid of that, and therefore this works. We'll see how it works. After all, he never gave it to them to get it back, so how does it work? Well, the Gemara can give a few answers to that question. Hamalva Hazeh, this lender, the Yisrael, says Rashi, Kishiyafresh Trumois, when he's mafresh his Trumois, Yimchar HaTruma, literally he would sell the Truma, the Akim Hadam Atzmo. Now he gets to keep the money by these, since the Yisrael's B'pirayin Achayiv, Zeh B'shvil HaKoyin, V'chein HaMaiser Rishon B'shvil Levi, HaMaiser Ani B'shvil Ani. So it doesn't mean that he can just simply keep Truma and start eating Truma. It's Truma, right? But he could be mafresh it, sell it, and then he could keep the proceeds, those monies, even though you would think that it's not his. But since he's owed money by these people, and he could technically have given it to them, and then they in turn give them money, so it's a way of avoiding this whole thing, makes it a little bit easier. So this is something in which was instituted actually for the sake of the Kohen, Levi, and Ani. Even if, let's say, they don't have money, but it helps them get loans. So it's a way to be able to stimulate the economy, even for people who may not have, but it's a way to be able to help them. Now, what happens if Mesu? Let's say the debtor does die. So how do you deal with this arrangement? So tzarech lito reshus mini yorshim. You actually have to ask the yorshim if they're accepting of this deal. Says Rashi, Mimnei she'in chayv zem mutal alehen liproya yitol mehem reshus im reitzim shiskabel chayvel b'shvilam ya'akvei mimaisers atzmo. Since technically they don't have to pay up the debts of their fathers. So let's say they were not yorish anything. So a poor person, she has nothing. So his children don't have to pay off their debts. So because of that, they really don't have to agree to this stipulation. But if they want, they can, and that would be certainly a good thing to pay off their father's debts, and that would be something which technically they could do, but again, he has to ask basically permission that they would be interested in taking upon themselves the same arrangement as they made with their father. Im hilvan mifnei beistin, and then it concludes and says, if let's say it was done in front of beistin, enos sarich litu rishus min yarshim, that once it was done, this was not just an arrangement between me and the Kohen, but we actually did this in a beistin, so then it's different. It's a different level of a loan, and therefore because of that, I no longer have to ask permission from the Yarshim. Says Rashi, Dish koyach lebeistin lahatul chayv zeh al kol hakahuna v'halavia lafi shetekanasam hu sheyimsu mois v'halva. So the Beistin themselves, they're the ones that instituted this in the benefit of poor people, of Kohanim Leviim. So therefore, in order that they would be able to get more loans, even if they don't have liquid cash available or they have not a lot of money, they don't have a lot of assets or collateral, so why would I lend to you? But if I know that I would be able to get your Trumas and Maasros, so then maybe I'll be more willing to do so. So this is something that the Beistin themselves were Masakin. They instituted this, and since they did so therefore even if that person died, his Yorshim have to follow suit. Says the Gemara. This doesn't make any sense. It never went into his hands, says Rashi. How does this whole thing work? It doesn't seem logical. How could he, the Yisrael, keep the Truma as the Kohen was never koine it, as it remains in the Israel's hands? It doesn't seem logical that this should work. And this is going to be question TA 28. Hamalva mois as a kohen lios mafresh hech mafresh v'hari lo zocha behen hakoyen. This is also going to be TV 29. So let me just quickly write this down. This is TA 28 and then TB 29. Okay, so we have three answers to this question. Amarav, we're talking b'makiri kahuna. We're talking about makiri kahuna, where it's like his friend, the Kohen, this guy who you went to is someone that is your friend. Says Rashi, kamo ish me'es macharoi. Says Rashi, v'ohavav shehimakirna v'ohavav. You like the guy. You always give all of your trumas and maasros to this particular one person, to this one Kohen, to this one Levi. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows that you're going to give it to him anyway. So all the other Kohanim basically say there's no way we're ever going to get anything from this guy. So that's the reason why it works, because of Makiri Kahuna or Levia. Shmuel Oimer, second answer, it could be that actually you're right. It wasn't that it just stayed in one person's hands, in the Israel's hands, but rather he actually did give it to someone else. And Rashi says, he gives it to a third party and then gives it back to him. So there was a transference. They actually says, even though you're right, this is a takana that Rashi says, takana asukain, that even though technically this should not work, but nonetheless we're lenient and we say it does work. Okay. Kul karav amri. Not everyone holds like Rava Makiri Kahuna, because b'Makari Lokatani. It doesn't mention that they're friends. It doesn't mention that. Kishmul like Amri. Not everyone holds like the sheet of Shmuel that it was Ali De'acherim. Why? B'Mazaka Lokatani. It doesn't say that it was given over to someone. It doesn't say that's what you're supposed to do. And Ku'ul Namil Amri Kechida Lo Moikminan. We're not going to hold like a das Yochid. Even though those other people are also a das Yachid, but Rav and Shmuel are on a different level over here, apparently. Okay. Tan Rabbanan. Hamal v'mois as a kohen So what it really means is that it's not everyone agrees to this. Only Rabbi Yossi holds that there's a din of osuas shenu zoicha k'zoicha. Okay, Tanu Rabbana. So hamal v'mois as a kohen, as a levi, as a ani, which is our Mishnah, that you lend money to a kohen and to a levi or to a poor person. And your goal is to, again, as we said, to keep all this to yourself. So you can do it and assume that those people are still alive. And you will basically take this money based on the market value at the time of the payment. So Rashi says, Kishar Hazoil, Shim Yuzlu, Gittin, B'shas Hafrashas Trumos, let's say the price goes down, Ekabim B'oiso Hashar Shel Shas Hafrasha. So you say it goes at the time of the separation. Ve'ein bo mishum ribis, there's no issue of charging interest, even though it does seem like interest, because you could be making a profit. You're lending them money, and then all of a sudden you're keeping Trumas and Meisers, and what happens if the value of the produce goes up in that situation, so you actually made money, etc. So it's not considered to be an issue of ribis, because normally you can't make a stipulation before the market price is established, since it's ribis. But here, if let's say the crop is damaged, the malveh, this guy, this Yisrael, will forfeit everything, and therefore receiving the produce at the current lower price isn't ribis. Ve'en bo mishum ribis, ve'en shvius mishmatatai, and shmita will not be mishamet the loan. Notice the loan will continue because in this situation he basically received payment over here through the Shumas and Meisers. The im bolaks or enu chayzer, and if they wish to retract from this whole deal, which we'll see later on, that cannot be done. We'll see who is not allowed to back out. So the Gemara says like this: Nisyaishu habalim. If let's say the owners are miyayish, says Rashi, going shehilvoi, he lent him money, kedei shir truma shana zu, the amount for this year of truma, yalmanas lekablon b'shana zu, in order to be able to be mekabel it this year. Varon, he saw shinishtadfu sadaisav, that his fields were getting destroyed. When this yayish moiso halva, so he felt bad about this loan. Yom Revayel chisaron kis v'archa chazru, basically said, I'm going to collect my money from the Trumas and Meisers from the produce of my field, but he's not going to be producing anything this year from the produce of my field because we're having a terrible crop. So I'm going to end up having lost my money that I lent to him. So says Rashi, v'netaknu ein mafresh lehem the yish dover de avidhu. He can't keep this truma if the field does produce crops. So nisaishu abalim ein mafresh lehem lefi she'ein mafrishin al ha'avod. You can't be mafresh on that which was lost, or you were anticipating a loss. Amar Mar. So again, we're going to explain some of these things. So you're able to receive based on the market value at the time of the payment. So pshita hakamashmon afal pishloi pasak kamisha pasak dami. Even though it wasn't stipulated, says Rashi v'hakamer hifsik shu paisik imahem. If you expressed yourself kishar zohu, if you would say sheim yuzlu midamim halolu, that if it goes down, shu paisik b'shas halva, yikablim kashar zoil. So even if you didn't make that specific declaration, it'll still work. The ein bo mishum ribis, my time as we said, if the crop is damaged, the malva will get nothing. Why? Because again, the malva, the Yisrael, is relying on keeping as payment for the loan the trumas and meisros that will be part of his growth of his field. Well, let's say that again his crops are damaged, he will get nothing. So ki isle, so now that the field does well, nami einbo, so Therefore, again, now that that's the case, so receiving the produce at the current lower price isn't going to be considered to be ribis. Ein bo mishum ribis. So ki isle nami ein bo mishum ribis. Vein shvius mishmatato dolo karina be lo yigois. You don't say lo yigois about pressuring him, because says Rashi, sheni yachol taiva klum. You're not asking. You know the poor person has nothing. The only way you're getting payment is from the meiser ani. So there's no lo yigos. Lo yigos is pressuring someone because you know Shemitah's ksafim is around the corner, so you're concerned that you're not going to get paid, so you're going to bother him, pay me, but you're not going to ever do that because this guy has no money to begin with. So therefore, Shemitah's not mishamet. V'im balaxer enu chayzer, you can't back out of this agreement. Amar Papa lo shana ela bal bias, but koyin. That's only referring to the Baal Bias is not able to back out from the deal. Of a Kohen, the borrower, the Kohen who is the loiva, the Baal Bias, he is allowed to back out. The Kohen is allowed to back out of the deal. Why? Ditnan, we learn nasan loy mois, because it says if you give him money, v'mashach himenu peris, but you didn't do mashicha, Yachol Aksarbo, you can retract. So since the Israel, who is the Malva, who gave money to the Kohen is giving or selling his fruit, so to speak, to the Truma, to the Israel. So that's like what the Kohen is doing. He's selling, so to speak. But since Mashiach didn't take place yet on those fruits, so therefore the Kohen is able to back out. That's the basic idea behind that. Okay. All right. And then we said, Nisyayishu habalim ein mafresh lehin lefishin mafrishin al obud. So let's say this man, the Baal, says he sees that his crops are not doing well, and therefore he wants to change his mind, because he realizes that as his crops are getting destroyed, he wants to back out of this. He says, Voy l'chisarn kis, v'yacha chazru, and then he changes his mind because of that. So we established he cannot be mafresh on that, because the yish davar ha'avidhu. He can't keep this truma if the field does produce crops. So the Gemara says, Pshita. Why would you think he could? Since he basically backed out on the whole situation, so then how? Because he was miyayish, so lotzricha di akoin, the stalks grew back. Ma'odetema, you would think aknasa milsehi, that the stalks have some value. Kamash malon, says Rashi. Bishashi yavshu nisyavish, the time that it all dried up and he gave up hope. Kavar olu bekand, there was still something in the stalks, and therefore you would think, says Rashi, Demishaolu Bikana, since there was still these stalks during that time, that he could always go back. It's a milso shchiach that it would be mekalkel completely, and it not being v'lo havi yish ma'alya, and therefore you would think, so maybe it's not a good yish. He really wasn't meyayish, because he wouldn't be makal. It wouldn't get completely makalkel. Everything is destroyed, and therefore he wouldn't be meyayish. Kamashmul, and that is a yish, and that's it. Okay, Tanya Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Hamal b'mayis as a kohen. So again, like our Mishnah, a Yisrael lends money to a Kohen that's a Levi. Now it's done bebeistin, umesu, and let's say the Kohen dies. So the din is that he's in this. His question is, does he give it? Is the arrangement with the Yorshim? So if it's a bebeistin, he doesn't have to make that stipulation. But the truth is, according to him, he says it's connected to that shevet, the shevet, that tribe in itself. That's ani bebeistin. And therefore, because of that, it doesn't make any difference. It's still, the stipulation still works. Umeis mafresh lo becheskas ani Yisrael. So again, if you have that's an ani bebeistin, also when it comes to an ani in a beistin, and the ani dies, mafresh becheskas ani Yisrael. Now, why? So Rashi explains, Nichuhu choni Yisrael. This is actually a good thing for the poor people. Shetei das zuno heges Yisrael. Kedei shiyimsu malvom lehem ki shitzarchu. Because who's going to want to lend to a poor person? The only reason why I would ever lend to someone who has nothing is because of me being able to be reimbursed with a meiser ani, which instead of me giving, I'll be able to keep. Hilkoch ki gavi misharniyim lav gezel asaniyim hu. It's not like you're stealing from poor people. You're actually helping all the poor people, even though they can say, "Oh, we want some of that meiser ani." The reality is that it will cause a lack of loans, and poor people want to also be able to borrow, and therefore this takana was actually for the sake of the poor people themselves. And therefore, even if the ani dies, we say that this stipulation works. He can still keep the meiser ani. Okay. It's not the ani Yisrael, but even the aniyim in the world, everywhere in the world. So my benaya, what's the difference? Either way, he can keep all of his money. He can keep the meiser ani. As we continue, Amid Beis, benaya ani kutim. What does that mean? Says Rashi, She'im ein ani Yisrael be'ir. Let's say there's no poor people, no poor Jews, Baruch Hashem, in the whole city. However, yesh ani kutim. There are kutim that are poor. Mafresh l'tzarcham. You can be mafresh it for their sake. The akvim l'atzim shav heim zoichen mehen, because they're also zoicha. Why? The kutim geri emes heim. He's of the opinion that the kutim are considered to be geri emes. Or Tanakami geri arayos heim. According to the Tanakama, no. The kutim are geri arayos. They only convert out of lions. Therefore, they're not really authentic. V'yafresh b'shvilam. He wasn't mafresh it for them. El b'shvil yani Yisrael yafresh. We call makim shehem, wherever they may be. So even if a yid is not, there's no poor Jews in our city, but unfortunately there's a poor Jew somewhere in this world. And because of that, so it was based on that. Okay. Now what happens if Hishir Ha'ani, the poor person who you lent to, you're only able to keep the meiser ani is because he's entitled to it. What happens if he becomes rich? Well, hopefully he'll pay you back also, but in mafresh alav, you can't be mafresh for this person anymore because he's not zeicha to it. V'zacha hala b'mesh b'yadai, and the ani is zeicha with what's in his hands. Now he'll be able to keep the money. Says Rashi, haloi v'hazeh, this poor person who became rich, eno chayiv lifarish mishalo, he doesn't have to, or lifroya, Rashi says he doesn't have to pay him back. Shari hilvo al menashli lipari menu, because the whole deal was, I don't have to physically pay you back any money. You'll be able to be compensated with meiser ani. So it's interesting. You can lend money to a poor person, but the fear is that they become rich. Because if they become rich, then the meiser ani is not theirs, because they're not shaykh to it, and you can't ask them to pay you back because the arrangement was for them not to actually physically pay you money. Rabbanan maishno lamisa. So how is this different when it comes to death? Diava tekanta, that when it comes to death, there is a tekana. It says Rashi, mafresh alav b'cheskas ani Yisrael. How come if you're mafresh with a chazaka for the poor people of Ishir Katani ein mafresh alav, that again you don't get it back, but by Misa you do. So this is unbelievable. Maishna, so the of the kana Maishna Ashir Stolov Takanta, Misa Shchicha, Ashir Shchicha. Because him becoming poor, a poor person becoming rich, is not common. There's a good chance he'll remain poor. And therefore Rashi says, we're not concerned about this, and therefore you're certainly going to get, we're not assuming that this guy's going to become rich. They're not going to end up losing out. The guy will be staying poor. However, the possibility of ani dying, a poor person will definitely die. A poor person will not definitely become rich. And therefore, there's great certainty, 100% that is, of a poor person dying. And therefore, because of that, we institute that if he dies, nonetheless, as we saw in our Mishnah, he can still continue this takana with his Yorshim, or not even with the Yorshim, if it was the Beis Din. So Ashir is so shchicha. Amar Papa, Haidar instance, what people says, they say, Chavrach mis asher, if your friend died, we believe him. It asher lo to asher, that he became rich, we don't believe him. Okay. So as we said, if the guy dies, you have to ask permission from the Yorshim to continue this. Tanya, Rabbi Yomi, Yorshim shiyarshu. If you have Yorshim who inherit, Yorshim delo yarti. What do you mean? Though if there are inheritors, where do we find that they don't? El Rabbi Yochanan shiyarshu karka delo shiyarshu ksafim. We're talking about that when they are Yorish land, what they're doing is they're taking over their father's place. Rav Yona's son, Haniach Maloi Machat, if you collect or Yorish, or you leave over rather, even a Machat, a needle. Rashi says, Haniach Karkamuat, a small amount, Ein Zem Mafresh Becheskas Yorshim, El Kishir Demei HaKarka, the value of the land. Goiva Malo Machat. Malo Kardam, Goiva Malo Kardam. So, Kardam is referring to a Karka Harbe, a lot of land. Rabbi Yochanan Rafil Haniach Malo Machat, even if, let's say, it was a small property, Goiva Malo Kardam, he can collect the whole thing. Ukamasa Dikatina Dabaya, like such and such a story. Says Rashi. Afil haniach mul machad goyva mul kardom. Kol chayvay. If the Yarshim inherited even a small property, then they could, the Malva can collect everything. Lafishu yachol litroif alaksiv litroif kol shah shifduhu mimenu. That he can basically keep taking it back over and over until his loan is paid off. As it's brought down in Masetas Ksuvas, Rashi says that who the havimaski be mezuzi, someone who was owed 100 zuz, the shacham, and he died. The shavik katina shamachamishim, and his Yarshim ended up having a property which is only worth 50. Asa bal chayiv tarpa, so the bal chayiv came and collected that land which was worth 50. Asa yasmi the some yom yayivle chamshin. They gave the $50 in cash, Visikluhu, and the Yisumim took it. Haduasa Tarfa, and then the guy took it again. So he was allowed to do that. He was able to collect basically twice, even though it was double the amount of the value of the property. Tanurbanan. Yisrael Sharmul Levi. If you have Yisrael who says to a Levi, Meiser Yeshacha Biyadi, that Meiser Yeshacha, that is to you, Biyadi is in my hands. Basically, you're saying that I have Meiser Rishon that belongs to you. So Ein Chayshishin LeTrumas Meiser Shabai. We're not concerned of Trumas Meiser. So it says Rashi, Shehi Farashti Hatvasi L'Tzarachecha. I was mafresh it for you. So in that situation, we're not concerned that there was any problems, because he wasn't specific in the specific area. But if he says Kor Ma'aseh Shachabiyadi Chayshel and Shumas Ma'aser Shabai, so we'll have to understand what exactly does this mean. Says the Gemara. So my Kaimer, what exactly is he saying? Amr Rabbi Hakam Yisrael She'amr Levi. Yisrael who says to a Levi, Ma'aser Yeshacha Biyadi, that I have Ma'aser Rishon, basically, which is yours, Ve'heluch Damav, and why? And I'm selling me your Ma'aser Rishon to me, right? That's basically what you did. Your Ma'aser Rishon, sell it to me. It's your Ma'aser Rishon, and sell me your Ma'aser Rishon. In Chayshishin Shema Asur Trumas Ma'aser Al Makam Acher. We're not concerned that he may have separated Trumas Ma'aser in another place, and that the Israel gave the Levi money 1/10 of his field. So we say he's not chayshed because the Levi doesn't know the amount that is in the hands of the Yisrael. But if he said a measurement, a core, a specific amount, we are chayshish, the Levi was mafresh it from another place. That's what we're concerned. It's possible that that he was mafresh trumas meiser, which is meiser and a meiser, because what happens is the Levi takes 1/10, and then the Levi has to give off trumas meiser or meiser and a meiser from that and give it to the Kohen. So the question is this Yisrael able to keep it basically and say, I'll give you this money, or are we concerned that some of it was that the Levi already was mafresh some of it? So if it was kur masi yeshalcha biyadi, he specified the amount, the heilach damav, and I'm selling me your meiser rishon to me. In that situation, we are concerned that the Levi may end up having given trumas meiser from it. And that's a problem. So he's going to take money for your Meiser Rishon. So the Yisrael will keep the Meiser Rishon. The Levi will now have Meiser Rishon, but yet he's still separated from that crop to give to the Kohen. Why would he do such a thing? This is what it means. Yisrael Shemer ben Levi. Again, Yisrael says to Levi, Meiser lavicha biyadi. It's your father's Meiser Rishon. Helach Damav. Again, sell it to me. Instead of me giving you the Meiser Rishon, let me keep the produce and I'll give you the money for it. We're not concerned that the father did this, that the father gave Trumas Meiser from another place. Kor Meiser Lavicha Biyadi, a specific amount of crop is Meiser Rishon, V'helach Damav, and I want to be able to buy it off of you. There we're concerned that maybe the father did so because, again, it was specific. It was a specific amount. It says Rashi, I told him in your father's lifetime about this, that I had his meiser. So why would we assume that someone's going to take shalom and a mukaf? In other words, when you're mafresh, you're supposed to do it when you're in front of the produce. Over here, he's not in front of the produce. So why would we assume this? Ella Omer Ravashi Hachakamer. Ben Yisrael Shomer Levi, he says, Kachamer Liaba Meiser Chabiyadi, that the Meiser Rishon is in my hands. Oh, Meiser Lavicha Biyadi, or it could be your father's. Chayshish Trumas Meiser Shabo, we are Chayshish. Kivan de Lokitz, since he didn't say a specific amount of produce that he's actually holding of yours, lo havi misaknin le balabayas, we can assume that the balabayas was not misak in it. He didn't fix it. Kur masilacha biyadi, if he specified amount, or kur masilavicha biyadi, ein chayshishin letrumas meiser shabo, they were not concerned of him taking the Levi taking off trumas meiser. Kivan de kitz, since it was a set amount, tikuni takne balabayas, we can assume that probably the balabayas was misak in it already. Says Rashi, so let's continue. What does that mean? I can understand a balabayas in Yisrael separates Meiser Rishon, Meiser Sheni, Meiser Ani. He doesn't separate Trumas Meiser. That's the Levi's job. So the Levi separates. The Levi gets Meiser Rishon, the 10%, and then the Levi takes off the 10% and gives, which is the full 1%. Why does he just give? He gives that to the Kohen, but the Yisrael doesn't do that. So why would we ever assume that's what happened? So So let's look at this Rashi before this. We're talking about the father, that there's a concept that he doesn't want to leave any issues behind when he dies, and therefore he probably was mafresh. Schomida shemlo hayodeh kamayesh. So it's possible in this case the father didn't do anything because he didn't know the exact amount. So if he didn't know the exact amount, then we're going to assume that the father was not mafresh the trumas and maisers. Was not mafresh the trumas meiser. Okay. So Gemara says, well, again, the Levi is the one that separates it. So what does it mean? It was done without his consent. How can a Yisrael separate the trumas meiser without the consent of the Levi? The answer is, Abu Lezer ben Gamel, who he decided Abu Lezer ben Gamel, Imer ben Nechshav lechem trumaschem. It says, I will reckon the truma as we continue the Lamed Aleph and Aleph. B'shtei trumas akas medaber. Why does it say it in this language, trumaschem? It must be it's talking about two different types of truma, which is what is achas truma gedoyla. Truma gedoyla, the Yisrael separates. We call it 2% or 1/50th, but it's not really a specific amount. It could be 1/40th, 1/60th, depending on your generosity. To the Kohen, v'achas trumas meiser. Trumas meiser, as we said, is the amount that the Levi gives to the Kohen, which again is taken first. The Yisrael gives to the Levi meiser rishon 10%. And that's done every year of the Shemitah cycle. Of course, not the 7th, but all years 1 through 6. And then the Levi in turn gives 10% of that to the Kohen. V'achas trumas meiser kashem shetruma gedola. You tell us ba'oimid. We know that when it comes to truma gedola, it can be done even through estimation. It says Rashi echem echamishin she'amar chachamim mafresh ba'oimid. You can just be somewhat. It doesn't have to be exact. It can be an estimate. Shimta in kan iser demidaraisa chita achas poret poteres akri. Dulo nasnu b'tayir shir el reishas degancha. When it comes to truma gedola, you can give anything. So therefore, you can even one little kernel of grain could potter the pile. So therefore, if you give 1/50th, this looks about 2%. That's good enough. And also, it's done b'machshava, through thought alone. So kach trumas meiser nitelos ba'oimid b'machshava. So too, when it comes to trumas meiser, it also works when it comes to oimid. You don't have to be exact. And also machshava, says Rashi, noisin ena b'tzad zeh l'shem truma. Let's say you cast your eyes on one direction, and you eat on the other direction. Even though you actually weren't even mafresh it still works. And here's the key. Just like Yisrael has the ability to separate Truma Gedoyla, of course he's able to separate Truma Gedola. That's what he does. He gives 1/50th to the Kohen. But so too, he could. The fact that we have this connection of Trumaschem says he can also separate the Trumas Meiser, even though really that's the Levi's job, but you could take the 10% of the Truma of the Meiser Rishon and then take Trumas Meiser and give 10% of that to the Kohen, even though that's really what the Levi does, but that is allowed to be done. But again, we make this distinction whether you said exact or you were not exact. If you said kur, you didn't say kur, and it's because if the father didn't know the amount, then you know he wouldn't have been mafresh it. Okay, we're gonna stop there. Let's see. Question. So as we said, that when it comes to, it could be taken ba'oyimid through estimation, just like Truma Gedol or Machshava, the Yesh Rishus Ba'al Bayis Litil Truma Gedola, and just like Truma Gedol, the din is that the Baal Bayis, the Yisrael, can separate Truma Gedola, so too he could do that with Trumas Meiser as well. Ad Kan.